Ah, better?
Better,
Okay. She's like, I want to see you, not the back of your head.
right? Or, just from like your nose up. Hey, Phil.
Good. How about you?
Good. What time is it in Canada?
We got 8 p.m. here.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I
All
think,
right, we are now live on YouTube.
yay!
Awesome.
I think a lot of people probably didn't make those who traveled out to Adult Swim may either be traveling back or maybe traveling back or whatever. Um, I'm actually I have to beat my squire and find out why he's not here because he
There you
got
go.
sick. So, but anyway, we can't talk about abuse. We want to be abusing the squires.
Choir abuse. They
All right,
love it.
folks, welcome to the show tonight. So this originally started as a Q&A call, and since a lot of us aren't able to make it between Adult Swim happening, life, things like that, we decided to put it on YouTube as well so we can share it around later. So I've got Sir Bree with me, who started the 100-Day Pell Challenge, now known as the Reaper Challenge to many folks because it started small and has now expanded to hundreds of us over the last few years. I know myself, I've been involved with this since 2016. Sterling's been involved longer than that, and wonderful Sir Bree started this whole shindig a while back, so Bria, let's get this ball on the road with the first question. Why did you start the challenge?
Honestly, the 100 Day Century Challenge is not new. A lot of kingdoms right before major wars and whatnot will encourage their fighters to participate. And that's kind of what we were doing. I was fighting in Murdiers, and I asked 7 people to join me, and they did. And that's the original 8 Reapers. We got to our 100 right before Gulf Wars, which is a big Southern war down here. And I was gonna pretty much shut it down. I mean, I made the patch just as a thank you uh, for the 7 people that joined me. So I hand out these 7 patches, and we all go to war. We have a great time, and then I get back, and there's like 10 more people on the thread, and it just never stops. So we actually had 3,000 posts on the Kingdom page by the time I flipped it to its own entity. And we actually used to call it the Pell Challenge 2.0, but it kind of morphed into what it is today. And so it went global. It spans all different forms. And currently we have, I think, 3,500 members worldwide. So, yeah, it really was not a purposeful thing, but it morphed into what it is today. And as a matter of fact, in March it'll be 10 years that I've been doing this. So it was just something that I saw that people were interested in. It was creating this ownership. It was creating accountability, and that's gold. So I just kept doing it, just kept pushing it, and got a lot of support, from the community to keep doing it. And I affectionately call it my part-time job, which it is. But that's fine. It's good stuff. I don't. It's always a joy to get on there and see what people are doing. Yeah.
I mean, as far as part-time jobs go, it's not often we get to do a part-time job that involves a sword or a polearm or whichever your preferred weapon system is.
Right. Yeah, and I talk to somebody daily. There's not a day that's gone by in the last 10 years that I'm not either helping somebody in the background with a training class, or a conversation, or some sort of encouragement, or a half dozen likes for the day. So it really is. I'm very involved in it on a daily basis. But again, it's a very uplifting thing. Uh, Very rarely do I have any kind of negativity that comes out of the challenge. As a matter of fact, I think I can, you know, count on one hand over the last 10 years that I might have had a negative aspect or a negative, individual or something like that. Very, very rare, which is gratifying, you know.
Yeah, in the years I've been involved, I mean, this was from a personal standpoint, this was the challenge that let me fight again. Because when I blew up my shoulder in 2016 in the middle of a tournament, my doc basically said, "Hey, you can't fight right-handed anymore. Period. Just stop." So my first round of the Reaper Challenge was learning to fight left-handed, doing 100 shots a day with my left hand, doing like, what the heck do I do with this arm? I don't get it.
Right.
Until my parents told me, "Hey, you know you're hardwired to be a lefty, and you were forced to learn right-handed in school." And my brain went, "Wait, what?"
Really?
So certain things left-handed made more sense to me from a technical standpoint. And going through and helping other folks do the same thing. It's one of the things I love about this is like you get moments where you get folks that get injured or they, you know, your mileage on your sword arm is going to just get destroyed over years because a lot of us that have been doing this for a while learned the wrong mechanics to start. So we're unlearning bad mechanics that hurt us to learn better mechanics to allow us to keep going further, which is something that I love on the challenge because you can see us posting every single day
Hmm.
and we'll post videos and we'll look at it and go, "Stop doing that. You are going to
Yeah.
bust yourself. You're going to do this." And we'll give X, Y, and Z reasons so we can help folks do this for another 50 years in the SCA and let them do it longer than us because they're not as broken.
Yeah. And the thing, the thing about posting videos too, is there's some bravery behind that. For a person to post video of themselves, and then, you know, open themselves up for the vulnerability of, 100 comments, or even two or three. So there's a vulnerability to that. And when people post video, I'm always kind of like, I give them a little head nod, like that was brave. That's brave. It's very easy to just, you know, and I like both. I mean, whether you put a video up or whether you just type in your day's exercise and whatnot, that's fine. But there is some bravery that goes along with posting your video and saying, "Oh, how bad am I? How good am I? Can please critique me?" But what I love about the challenge is, everybody on the challenge is really just trying to get better or trying to recover. And we've even had people that don't heavy fight, right? They don't fight at all. But for health reasons, all they can do is stand in front of a Pell and swing on that Pell and get some sort of exercise. And we had a gal, Cheryl, many years ago. She contacted me and she says, I don't fight. I've never fought, but I need something to help me with my health. Can I get out there and do this? And I'm like, absolutely. So a couple of years later, uh, a couple of gentlemen in the society got together and they shipped her a rapier sword. So now she actually does rapier, and she lost a bunch of weight and she got motivated and healthy, um, and so that's you can't put a price on that. I mean yeah, and that's why I love doing this so much is because I get those feel good stories every day. You know, somebody is succeeding every day. Um, and there's also that push too, like, somebody is so close to being elevated or, being considered for elevation, I should say. And they put the commitment and time in. It's just that little nudge that they needed. And there they are. I get to see them post that they're being elevated or they've been announced. That's pretty gold too.
And that actually goes into one of the next questions I had about talking about the different styles, and we're going to make this one into a bit of a two-parter of what styles or weapon systems do we now have in the Reaper Challenge compared to when it started, and what kind of rules did you set for yourself and the first generation of Reapers at the start, and how has that evolved over time?
So the first part of that question is, we've everything from lightsaber to foam to axes to archery, live weapons, I should say, heavy, of course, rapier. Um, and I think that's fantastic, that we've been able to cross so many different organizations and have that kind of ownership and have that kind of community. It's not just SCA, right? And even the Steel folks, I forgot to mention them too. I think it's is it Bohurt? I never do get the pronunciation of that correct, but yes. So
You heard her, yeah.
Yeah, so that's fantastic to see too. The second part of that question was,
So
how's it
looking
changed the
into
rules?
what rules did you set at the start? So like throwing X amount of shots, how often, things like that, and how have they evolved over the last 10 years?
They really haven't. I mean, it was very straightforward from the beginning. It's 100 days consecutively, every day, 100 blows. You miss a day, you start over. You get one pass if you're sick, but that pass should include something like, read something, watch a video. And if you're going to go past one day, then start over, right? There's that ownership, that accountability. But it really hasn't changed that much. We had to fine tune or tweak some things. We've got people that come in and they want to put their own spin on it. We're like, oh, I'm going to double up. I missed a day, so I'm going to double up. No, no. It's consecutively every day. So, we had to clarify some things, but other than that, it hasn't really changed much. It's been very straightforward and, um, yeah. So, and yeah, pretty easy to adhere to, I think. You know.
Well, yeah, trying to have a clear cut. Like one of the things I know because when we were starting when you were starting to help coach me, we talked about one of the reasons you wanted to do this is that accountability and instilling that discipline of doing it every day.
Yeah.
Because even if something's going wrong for the rest of your day, the rest of the day was a write off. You still got your homework to look forward to because it's time you can take to yourself. You can center, you can just block out the world for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, and just work on that flow. Whether you're throwing your
Mhm.
shots, whether you're with a rapier, you're doing your lunges, your draw cuts.
Yeah.
If you're, you know, if you're working with a lightsaber, you can just, channel your inner dark side for a little while and just get that aggression out.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
and going into when you were talking about the past day when you're sick, I know a lot of us had that trouble when COVID was rampant.
Yeah, it was hard.
And we were posting videos back and forth of what to do when you're sick, what to do when you're injured. It's like, I can't stand. Cool. Throw your shots from sitting.
Right.
If you're a heavy combatant, do something that 90% of people don't do on the Pell. Fight from your knees. It is a
Hmm.
big part of our game. You can't stand? Cool. You can probably still kneel
Yeah.
and still throw those slow shots, things like that. Um, what are some other tricks you've done over the years? If you can't throw a sword, like I know some of us use a 7-10 mil pop bottle, and because that still
Mhm.
activates the muscles the same way when you're doing your Pell work. What are some other
Yeah.
ones you have in your
I
back
think
pocket?
sometimes we have to get creative, right? We've got people that fly around for business. We've got people that go on vacation with their kids and whatnot. Um, so, getting creative, doing your footwork, doing open hand drills. I come from a martial arts background. So, when I was coming up, I was doing kendo and whatnot. And so for me, it's like I'm very accustomed to katas and footwork and drill and open hand work, slow work. Yeah, sometimes you just have to get creative. I mean, I was at the family at Christmas time. I couldn't get to the Pell, so I had two Christmas wrapper tubes. We all love those, right? And so I'm doing Florentine in the living room on a door jamb, whatnot. So uh, getting it done can get really creative. I've seen some people with, like you said, a pop bottle. We've got a guy that hung a sock from his hotel shower curtain rod so that he had a hanging Pell, so he could get his shots in. There's been some really creative ways to go about it, and the ownership's a lot of fun to see how people, apply that.
So we actually got a couple questions to go through from A in
Sure.
the call and B, I got one off YouTube. So one of the ones Sterling posted that I want us to talk about because this is a really good one. When you're seeing someone post a video or post a blurb of what they're working with,
Mm.
how do you figure out how to give them critique or give them support while still balancing not overloading information?
Mm, Typically I'll reach out behind the scenes if I see somebody that might be struggling or just doesn't seem to have proper technique or whatnot, I'll reach out and I'll have a discussion with them. And one of the things I like to say is, please forgive me if I sound patronizing. I am not. I don't know what your skill level is. So tell me what your skill level is. Tell me where you're at. How many years you've been fighting? That kind of thing. And so gathering information about a particular individual kind of gives me a baseline foundation to work from. And then we take it in chunks, right? So, if you're a brand new fighter and you have zero idea what Pell work is, there's some tremendous resources out there on YouTube and whatnot. So, and I'll do that with them for a couple of days, sometimes a couple of weeks. It just depends on what they need, right? So you've got somebody who's brand new, they've never worked on the Pell before, and maybe we go to Gregor Hawk, maybe we go to Sean, right? Duke Sean. And we send them those videos. And so it kind of gives them an idea of like, okay, start small, let's build from there. And there's many, many times that I will just do a video call with them and say, okay, let's talk face to face. And then I will demonstrate something, have them demonstrate it back to me, and we'll work that way. But over giving too much information can be very frustrating sometimes. So I think it's really important, one, to establish where that person is in their fighting path, and what their understanding is of what they're trying to accomplish, all of those questions. And then once you have that, working with them in smaller chunks, to break up that information and just not overwhelm them with it. I think a lot of times what we do at a fighter practice when we have a new fighter is we do exactly that. We overwhelm them. We don't let them fight several fights in a row. We typically, and unless they're being unsafe, obviously. But you've got somebody who's trying to get through a fight, and you have somebody stopping them every 4 seconds. They've thrown 2 shots and they get stopped. They've thrown 2 more shots, they get stopped. And I think it's very counterproductive. So, allowing somebody, give them a chunk of information, allow them to work through it, and then give them another chunk, right? And I think that for me, that's a teaching style that I'll use. But really, you've got to establish where that person is. That's a eyeball to eyeball conversation. Otherwise you're just kind of assuming, you're just kind of throwing information out there, and you really just don't have any idea what they really need. So I think communication's huge.
So with that being said, looking in, and because we've all seen that deer in the headlights look at a new fighter or newer fighter of, they've just had 16 different things thrown at them, and they may as well have smoke coming out of their ears because they just got overloaded.
Yeah.
So when you have those situations, whether it's one of your students or a student at a practice, what's some of the ways you've either brought them back into focus, and also advocated for them when someone else tries to throw something else at them?
Typically at our practices, I've been fighting with this area for quite a while, so they know me. I don't like to interrupt fights. Let them get 3 fights in, and then say, hey, you know what? You're dropping your shield. Okay. So on your next 3 fights, I want you to mentally focus on keeping that shield right here. Okay. Throw whatever shots you want to throw, but I want you to mentally focus, be aware. Right. And a lot of times when we start new people out, this is dead. It just kind of hangs there. They don't really know what to do with it. They don't lift it. They don't move it. There's no active ingredients with your shield work, because they're just trying to figure this out and stay alive, right? Trying to block or whatnot. So, letting them fight 3 fights, whatever it is, and getting through that, and then stopping them and saying, okay, here we are. Let's focus on not dropping our shield. Okay. Let's mentally grab that shield and say, okay, I'm going to hold it right here. This, whatever you do, and so there's that. And I think the other part of that question is, when somebody is just overwhelmed with information, sometimes it's just, good to let them take a break, right? And then ask them, okay, what have you really keyed in on that everybody's throwing at you today? Oh, I really keyed in on the flat snap, that I have to get my hand above, that shield. At least if you're my height, right? So, and I'm like, okay, great. You know what? It's okay to let everything else go. Let's just focus on that, right? Let's just focus on that. It's okay to let everything go. Just take a deep breath. Uh, and you can see him kind of, okay, yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, let's just focus on a flat snap. That's okay. And most importantly, oh, for Lord bid, make it fun. you know, like we've all had a class or a dojo or training experience where it wasn't fun. And that's part of the path, obviously. But when you're coming out of the gate and you're brand new, you know, try to make it fun. Try to laugh. Try to enjoy it. Laugh with them.
Yeah, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Because
Right.
that's one of the biggest reasons we all do this. Is like, yes, we get to dress up in armor, we get to look real cool, we get to swing swords and be a badass. But if you're not having fun doing it, what's the point?
Right. Right. And not everybody is going to stay in armor or want to become, masters of defense or knights. Not everybody is on that path. Not everybody wants to fight sword and board or some people just want to be war fighters. And I think communication with the individuals around you that want to participate in fighting, let's communicate with them, right? Not everybody wants to fight SCA. So, it's okay if you don't want to ever be a knight. It's okay if you don't ever be, a master of defense. It's okay if you just want to fight with a glaive and war. And I think that we should make that far more acceptable than sometimes we do. We make it harder on people sometimes because we're like, you got to do this. And then it's no fun for them.
Yeah, a lot of folks when they start out. I mean, I know when I did, it was, hey, you start with sword and shield. No ifs, ands, or buts. You start sword and shield. And there's a
Right.
lot of folks that had a practice that didn't come back because they didn't want to fight a sword and shield. They wanted to fight with a pole arm. They wanted to fight with a katana because they wanted to be a samurai. They wanted to fight
Right.
two sword because they wanted to be Musashi. It was a whole thing.
Right.
Um, I'll try to say with folks when they're coming in, if I'm starting to teach them, is you can start with whatever you want and whatever you want to play with, as long as you're having fun. Cool. Um, Over the next few months or years, if you're having difficulty fighting against something, learning to fight with it is one great way to learn to fight against it.
Yeah.
Because you learn,
Right.
okay, the heater can only cover this much kind of thing, or a center grip can only cover this much kind of thing.
Right.
It's up to
Yeah.
you.
I ask my squires, when you go to practice, uh, fight two weapon styles, right? And we're not talking about, just getting in armor your first day. Fight whatever you want to fight your first day, right? Let's have fun. And I've always said, let's create passion before we create pain. Let's create passion before we lay down all these rules on them.
Yes.
But the little as you're coming out of that newish kind of state, I asked my squires, please fight two weapon styles every fighter practice. So, my squire Daniel just picked up greatsword, so he fights sword and board and greatsword now. And then I asked them to finish with saber. So 10 saber left hand, 10 saber right hand, and that is your practice. Two weapon styles, and well, three if you count saber. So.
So when you say saber, you mean like single sword?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, that's always
Yep.
a fun time
I
because it either
ask
goes
them.
really
Yeah.
well or really badly.
Yeah, well, it's the last thing I ask them to do before they leave practice. One, because you're dead tired typically, right? So you're very vulnerable. They are fun to watch. Right? But yeah, how many times have you been in a tournament and you've lost an arm and you've never practiced saber? You've never practiced single sword, and here you are. you know my squire Isadas was in a bridesmaid tourney recently, and he had to fight left-handed, and I saw him throw that shot, and he looked at me afterwards and he's like, I need to get on the Pell with left hand. I'm like, oh yes you do. Yeah, and he knew it too. He could just feel that there was a lot of weakness, and I'm like, you've been doing your saber? He's like, yes ma'am, I've been doing my saber. I'm like, okay. But, get on the Pell, train your stupid hand, whether it's your right hand or your left hand. We all have a stupid hand, right?
Yeah, that
I
happens.
I train left and right. every single time I get on the Pell. And so I actually have a flow drill that's in the featured pin posts on the Pell Challenge. But that is a wonderful flow drill, and it's just it's just warming up both hands and getting that coordination going, right? So
Yeah. I got a couple questions coming in from YouTube. Bo's asking, why does the challenge now include other art forms in different aspects of the sport when we're looking to compare similar sports or disciplines or different ones? Because I know we have Hema now and Rapier. There's Heavy and Buhurt. So
mhm.
why was this expanded from just Heavy?
Honestly, it was word of mouth. So some SCA guys, heavy guys were fighting steel, EMP, and it just kind of followed that path. So then the foam guys heard about it and they jumped on. The lightsaber guys heard about it and jumped on. Archery came and said, "Hey, Bree, can we do this too?" I'm like, "Absolutely." Live weapons came. I'm like, "Absolutely." Uh, so again, it really just kind of morphed on its own. And then I've just tried to support all the different communities, and I have a lot of dialogue with the different communities, asking them, how the challenge can support them. And it's really fun to see like a Reaper patch walk by, in Europe. You're like, "Oh, that's cool," right? Oh, am I going to forget her name right now? But she's actually a world champion in steel fighting. Um, I wish I could remember her name right now, but she just won world champion in I think longsword, and she's wearing a Reaper patch. I mean, who doesn't love that? That's amazing. But that communication, the patch has really become a tool, a visual tool. Because, somebody from, say, steel fighting or rapier will see it on an SCA heavy, and now you get a conversation. Or, one Reaper will see another, and now it's a friendship. We have something in common. So they start communicating, and that's a win. That's a win all day long.
Yeah, it's always fun because then you can train because working with the second part of that about different aspects of similar sports.
Mhm.
Um, I know one of the things that's been helping me with the amount of rapier footwork that I am adding into my polearm game now is so much fun, and it is one of my favorite things when I'm fighting someone. Like, because you get that standard sword and shield approach to a polearm where I'm here, I got my blade right at your eyeball, and someone with a heater and a sword tries to come in and just control my blade before they close, and all I do is a quick disengage and poke them in the face,
Right.
and they just stop dead and go, "What just happened? Why did that?
Yeah.
Why?" And
Yeah.
I just grin. It's great being able to cross over like that. So Bo put in another question, actually, that we can actually pop off of this one, talking about expanding the forms. Um, Asking about has the bar been lowered in the challenge to accommodate everyone? And he put a question mark about the sock on the shower bar as a target. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a very rare thing, right? I mean, here's an individual that's traveling for work, wants to own their day, uh, you know, can't get it done and say on a Pell. So, and actually contacts me, asked me, "Is this okay?" And I'm like, "Well, tell me exactly what you're doing, right? Like, what is your effort here?" Uh, so that's kind of like a one-off. We don't typically have people that kind of diverge like that from actual Pell work or whatnot. Um, I'm sorry. What was the second part of that?
Asking about lowering the bar to accommodate everyone with the crossover of the different styles now.
No,
He sort
no.
of asking about.
Actually, I'd say it's difficult on other styles sometimes. So let's take archery for a second. You know, shooting 10,000 arrows versus 10,000 shots on a Pell has its own set of challenges, right? Lightsabers are very, very same to say bastard sword.
Mhm.
So we haven't had to lower any kind of standard. If anything, I watch different forms struggle in their own ways to make that accountability happen.
Yeah, actually, Sterling just did a magic. Laura, I'm gonna butcher this name. Uh, Laura or Lara Serviol is the longsword champion you were mentioning a few moments ago.
Yes, yes, yes. And I've watched her for a couple of years, and watched when she started out, and here she is, world champion, one of our reapers, and was proud to represent her patch, which again, that's winning. That's winning for everybody too. Not only I think does it inspire other people in different forms. So I came from kendo, right? And when I found SCA heavy, I was in love because kendo had. I was in a weight class. I got boxed in. I couldn't escape. I had to fight women. I couldn't fight anybody else. That kind of thing. I mean, in the dojo in practice, it was I could fight anybody, but typically in a tournament, I had to fight other women. It was very, pigeonholed as far as. And so when I found the society, I was like, oh my gosh, I can fight anybody. I can really challenge myself. Uh, and I found SCA heavy to probably be the most difficult form I've ever tried to master. And I'm still wouldn't say I've mastered it. There's different weapon styles and footwork and ideas and so many different ideologies of fight, right? SCA fight. You can talk to 3 different knights and they're all going to have a little bit of a different take on how they train, what their ideologies are, even how they feel about chivalry, you know?
A lot of fun looking at the different. So I love going to Pennsic and going to just the pickup field, and you see folks from different kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
And the some of the running loving jokes with different kingdoms of, oh, you're from Palantir, here's your standard issue greatsword, or you're from the Outlands, here's your standard issue Madu.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
if I see Tiberius is in here. If you're from Eldemir, depending on what part of Canada you're from, here's your standard issue parka. Uh,
Hello, Tiberius.
I know some of us from the frozen north have, just like when we were kids and trying to figure out a Halloween costume, we have figured out how to put thermal gear underneath our soft kit before we go to a fight practice, because all of us have fought at least once in the snow. Now, you want to talk about footwork? There's a footwork practice, making sure you don't slip out from yourself and land on your butt before you even swing a shot.
I highly recommend cleats.
Oh, I tried cleats once and I almost broke my ankle.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not for everybody. I don't
boots.
use them today. Yeah, I don't use cleats today, but when I was in southern Florida, Trimaris, we had a lot of sugar sand down there. So it's very soft, very slippery. And so it's not uncommon to see quite a few of our folks fighting in cleats down that way.
Yeah, I've seen that few. I know Duke Sven down in Onstiora, he's got a whole pattern now. He
Yeah.
takes, I think they're boxing boots or cleats of some variant, and he actually makes turn shoes around them. So he has the ankle support and all the support of the modern hidden as a Norse boot. It's awesome to see.
Yeah, I completely stole the photographs off of that. They're in my archive that I send to my squires.
I haven't figured out how to make it work yet, but working back at Tandy now, I might have to use that as an excuse.
Yeah.
So funny enough, I got another question coming in from Saber, which is awesome to see because that dude has been quiet for far too long, and now he's got
Hey,
his phone
Saber.
back so we can actually start talking again. He's asking, what's a good exercise or method for working on your calibration? Coming from a martial arts background, he's a Wing Chun Kung Fu guy.
Yep.
He's passionate, he gets real excited, and sometimes can hit a little too hard in the fight.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, communication, right? So, firstly, if you're relatively new, or maybe you have questions, you're in a new kingdom or whatnot, put it out there. Hey, can we do engaging blows? Right? So you fight like 2 or 3 fights, and then you communicate. So how are my blows? Well, here in our kingdom, those are like super excessive. Okay, I've been in kingdoms where I had to wear a mouth guard. Just to do pickups. I have to wear a mouth guard. I've been in kingdoms where, yeah, I'm like, did you hit me? I'm not sure you hit me. Right? But it's just that communication again. So one, asking about, gauging blows, right? Like, is my calibration good? Do you feel that it's a healthy calibration for this kingdom? Do you feel it's a healthy calibration for you personally? Um, and then, there's some exercises too. For example, let's say spear work. You hang a tennis ball, from a tree, or maybe your garage, and you know you thrust into that tennis ball, and of course, if it's spinning around the branch and ping ponging off of your ceiling of your garage, maybe you're being a little excessive. If you're using your spear work on your Pell and you are rocking your Pell back, I use a helmet on top of my Pell. So again, I think part of that's an experience question too, and the other part of that is communication, communicate. And I think that's how, one, you keep yourself out of trouble, right? Understanding the calibration of different kingdoms and different individuals. Not everybody is going to accept your whiffy light blow. Not everybody wants to have, their block knocked off. I am a human T-ball stand. Okay. Like in this game, at 5'7", I am a human T-ball stand. I don't need my block knocked off. So I'm very happy to communicate that with you right up front.
Yeah, we don't need
Thanks,
to
Saber.
injure to get a good blow. Like one of the things I tell new folks or anyone is I want to kill my friends. I don't want to hurt them. If I kill you, you fall down, you get back up, everyone laughs, we have a good time. If I hurt you, it's paperwork, it's a hospital, it's never a good thing, and then you're out for 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, you know what? And it comes back to that. Let's create, some passion before we create some pain. So you're relatively new fighters, you thump them too hard, they're not going to want to come back, right? And some people are like, hey, my profession, some people don't want hand injuries with their profession. They have to have their hands. And of course, there's concussion risks. I took a blow many, many years ago that tore the ligaments in the back of my neck. It is a permanent injury, right? That is an injury that I have to work with every month because somebody hit me so hard, they gave me whiplash. And I was a relatively young fighter and I wasn't moving. And, so again, we're not here to destroy our friends. But we also want to be clean and we also want to be, thorough. That discussion is always in the Shiv meetings, at some point during the year or some point, because it's always a concern to be fair and clean, to accept a fair blow, but also not to harm.
Yeah, I like when I'm sparring with someone or I'm working with someone is I like no doubt when
Yeah.
we're playing. Like I don't need you cleaning my clock. Like if there have been times I've taken light shots, but they were clean as heck because I had my socks just faked off, and they were right here and just went, and I just went. That was great. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And there's other times where I've just glanced off someone and they've tried to take it, and I go, no. This is why this happened here, and again, it
Yeah.
comes back to the communication thing. We need to talk things back and forth.
Right.
Like I mainly fight with a 6 foot pole arm that we call my death stick because it doesn't flex when I hit someone. It is an 1 3/4 rattan planed on the sides that I've been fighting with since 2019. I don't need to throw hard to get someone to take it.
Yeah. And we've got some really big people in our game. You know what I mean? They're tall, they've got good mass behind them. So yeah.
So you need to make sure you're talking to them, and because for example, we've got Juliana on the call who is about I think 5'2".
Hello, Juliana.
I don't need to hit Juliana the same way I'm going to hit Miles from the West, who's 6'6" and can scorpion wrap me from Timbuktu.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
For me, it's like I want a clean blow. if I've done nothing to impede that blow, I'm flat-footed, I didn't block, and it's super light, I'm like, I did nothing to block that. It's there. Thank you very much. Um, but again, it's that communication, and every kingdom's a little bit different, I think, in their calibration or their ideals about what a good blow is or whatnot. And that's why we have all the rules at war. We go over those things. Uh, and I think for the most part, I think the chivalry is very good across the known world about educating the fighters and helping them to understand, what is and isn't acceptable, and it's always a concern for the chivalry. I mean, every year I hear discussion on it.
And I don't think we're ever going to stop having discussions on it, just
I
because
hope
that's the
not.
nature of the game. Because
Yeah,
we're evolving every year, every month, sometimes depending
mhm,
on new armor systems, new people coming in, new folks coming in that have different martial arts backgrounds,
yeah,
and they're inputting and adding to the art. Because I mean, if you take, like, if we had a time, if we had a TARDIS, let's just hypothetically go into something here. If we had a TARDIS and we took a knight that was just knighted in 1977 and put them against a fresh knight that got knighted yesterday,
yeah.
what would that fight look like?
Freon can for sure. What is it? Freon can helmets for sure. Maybe some
Yep,
carpet armor.
probably. Hockey gloves
And
for the no basket hilts, hockey gloves.
right, now we've got spring steel and I mean, I wear a lot of hidden plastic.
Yep,
And
same.
my helmets are always 12 gauge top and 14 sides. And I
Yep.
have a baronial coronet on my helm. So at the temple, it's probably 10 gauge because it overlaps with three different metals. So I have to be
Yep.
very cautious if somebody hits me here in the temple because it has those three layers of steel,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, it's like you get dead zones.
Yeah,
I have my helmet is a Knot Wolf, so
yeah.
those things are tanks to begin with.
Pretty helms,
And
yeah.
then I added a mild steel, or no, a stainless welded drape with a
Mm-hmm.
leather mount. So I
Yeah.
was getting right here. I would, if you hit me half an inch above, it would
Mm-hmm.
thump and ring. If you hit right on that leather, it I barely felt it. So
Yeah.
I had to start judging it by sound for a bit until
Mm-hmm.
I got fed up with that and I just took the darn thing off.
Yeah. I try to be very aware. And I also, like, if I'm finding somebody new, I will tell them, hey, there is a dead spot in my helmet right here. Okay. Like it's three layers of steel. If you hit me there, please let me know. I usually am really good about catching it, but every once in a while I'm like, was that good? You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Getting back to the questions on YouTube, um, Bo's asking about emphasis on a proper Pell, so to speak. So actually having a Pell in front of you for targeting and doing Pell work. I know a lot of us don't, just because, apartments.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about different Pell options and things you've used over
Uh,
the years?
Yeah, sure. My pels for me, like I said, I'm 5'7". I'm a small fry in SCA heavy. Um, so for me, my pels are built very dimensionally. I typically use bucket cement, 4x4, 6 foot 4x4, and then I place two 2x4s at about 20 inches, so it forms kind of a cross. And then I'll put my helmet on top. And the reason I say 22 inches, and I can tell you that, from the top of that helmet to the top of the cross is 11 and a half inches, is because I build my helms dimensionally. And my helm is a 6'1" individual. So I'll have a 6 foot and, I literally measure out somebody, or I did measure out somebody who is 6'1" and then build my pelt just to that. About the average height I run into, 6'1", 6'2", whatnot. A Squire brother many years ago who is Duke Odo, Duke Odo was like 6'4", And so I built a 6'4" Pell because at the time I was having all kinds of difficulty, trying to work up here. And, for me, I don't necessarily, looking for that head hunting like I did in my youth with somebody who's 6'4". I built a 6'4" Pell in a cross shape, and I learned how to work the body. So, I like Duke Oto's armpits. you know, or but I had to train myself on my Pell and make that Pell dimensionally for myself. The other reason why I put shoulders on my Pell is because now I have to work around the shoulder to create a wrap, right? And it makes it much easier to put a cardboard cutout on there of a shield. Now I can do a shield swipe, snap in, kind of things like that. So I build very dimensionally, like Pells. And there's some people that don't. Some people just go with the, regular 4x4 in the ground, and there's no helmet on it, there's no shoulders, it's just a stick, and that's fine. Whatever gets the job done for you. But sometimes Pell work does not translate to a real fight, right? So you've been throwing this flat snap, and but you're not getting your hand high enough to get over that shield. So now you go into a real fight, and you're just hitting shield, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's really important to, as you're beginning Pell work, to create dimension, to create targeting, accuracy. Yeah. But you can actually, a great resource is you can go onto the 100-day Pell Challenge and you can flip through all the photographs and you will see tons of different Pell ideas.
I love the ones we had, and I've seen a few of them where folks have made Pells that have arms on them, and they can add
Yeah.
swords to them. They can add shields to them. They can actually change the guards and things like that. So if you want to work on that wonderful slot shot for A-frame fighters, you can work that center line. Um, I mean, the one I've got at home is one I basically made out of a 4x4. I got a
Yeah.
12-foot 4x4, cut it into certain lengths, and then I built it and wrapped it in rope and duct tape.
Yeah.
Because I very, very, very rarely hit my Pell full force.
No, I highly recommend that you don't, and that's a very popular discussion too, engaging with Pell work. And yeah, we all like to go out there once in a while and just, play havoc on the Pell. But in truth, you're really trying to work on your accuracy, you're trying to work on your footwork. Um, and so that doesn't necessarily take breaking your stick or breaking your Pell. Yeah.
Now, the only
And
Pells I've found that you can hit full force and not injure yourself are those wonderful tire swing ones.
yeah. Yeah, and that's heck on your joints too, though. The reverb that you get through the joints. And I will say, as I've gotten older, Pell work never hurt before, but as I've gotten older, hitting really hard on my Pell, I can feel it in my elbows and my shoulders, and your joints just change as you age. But repetitive injury can be a thing. And I'd like to say to that, if you are experiencing any kind of like sensitivity to repetition on your Pell, switch up weapons, right? Instead of doing 100 days of offside headshots that are really bothering your shoulder after like day 65, switch to a different weapon for a while. Go for spear for a while. Let the body relax and then go back at it.
So that's a fun thing to actually segue into, is talking about plans for Pell work. So when you're going into a 100-day, because you've done how many at this point?
I couldn't even begin to guess. Yeah. I mean, as far as like the actual 100-day Pell challenge goes, I finished 5 rounds. I'm not, but over the course of my lifetime, no
Yes.
idea. Yeah.
I mean, I
No
know
idea.
everyone on this call right now has done at least 2 or 3 rounds. So, I mean, it comes with it.
Yeah. And we've got folks out there that are on like round 23 or 24. It's just, yeah.
So working into so when you're making a plan, so it's the way I try to think about it is it's like when you're planning a gym workout. You're not going to
Uh-huh.
go in and work your arms every day. You're not going to go in and work your legs every day.
Right.
So with what you're talking about with different weapons forms is like, would you work, let's do 100 left-handed shots today, 100 left-handed flow shots. Make tomorrow right-handed to give your left hand a break. Make the next day pole arm or something like that. Or
Yeah.
would you maybe switch it to, like you were talking about before, of keeping it to two forms?
So for me personally, I always started out with a flow drill. Okay, that's Florentine, if you would like to call it that, two sticks, and I put on my helmet. I put on typically sometimes I'll put on my van braces, but I always have you know, uh, my sword, my shield, my helmet on. Nothing like whacking yourself in the head when you get a little bounce off the Pell and you don't have your helmet on. Also, you know, if you're just doing Pell work without your armor on, or at least your helmet, uh, it's different, right? Armor binds, you know. So here you are, you're like, I am the best at Pell, right? And then you go out to practice, and you're like, this doesn't work this way, right? Because you've got this binding of your van braces and whatnot. So now you've kind of fooled yourself, right? I mean, mechanics are still there, and you have to adjust, but it does help if you put on your some armor. But for me, I start out with a flow drill, and that's just to warm up and get both hands engaged, get my mind engaged. I've got my feet engaged. I'm working different angles as I'm doing this flow drill, and sometimes that's all I do, and I'll just work all the way around the Pell and do those flow drills. But I always try to start out that way, and then what I'll do is I'll go into so it's basically you do two-shot combos 5 times without repeating. And then you go into 3-shot combos 5 times without repeating. And then 4, and then 5. So you end up doing 5 shots 5 times without repeating. And that's tough. 5-shot combos without repeating, that's tough. And it's a lot of fun too if you have somebody that helps you out, because they'll catch you. They're like, you did that one. You have to start over. So I'll do that. And then I work a lot on targeting. So I want to be able to hit that dime, so from wherever I'm at. So if I want to do, say, a strike down the middle, let's say I want your bar grill. Well, I've got a dot on my bar grill. And so no matter if I'm far left or far right, or if I'm in A range or C range, I'm still aiming for that accuracy. I'm aiming for that particular spot. So when I am on the field, it's there. And then mostly I'll finish up, I usually finish up with ranging. So, I'll start in A. Sometimes I'll do shots from my knees, which almost nobody does, which is very important. Sometimes I'll finish with saber, just single sword only, and then I'll angle my body to that, right? So it just depends on what I really want to work on, but there are things that I absolutely put in every single time, and so that's the flow drill, that's footwork, and that's accuracy. Those 3 things happen every single time. Finishing out with saber or range drills. So, like, if I'm in C range, can I hit that accuracy? Can I hit that offside? Is there a leg shot there? And then I'll move into B range, and I'll do it from left, right, So I work my ranges too. And it's really, experimenting with that and then taking it back to practice, because there's nothing like, hat time, right? Pell work is not a substitute for hat time. But it is one of your tools. So.
Yeah, so one of the things you can do is when you're going to practice is if you've got a shot that's not working right, if you're trying to throw, so being a lefty, one of the ones I throw a lot is I throw that wonderful up and over offside that a lot of people hate.
Yeah.
I worked, I think it was my second round. I worked on how to throw that repeatedly with minimal recharge.
Mm-hmm.
So I could close in on someone, get my shield here, and I can throw 1 half cock, 2 half cock, 3. I think I'm at 4 of them before I start losing power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those ones you can work on that you're finding maybe there's like a kink in your elbow when you throw the shot, or in your wrist, and trying to slow it down, you figure, okay, it's because my armor's pinching here, or my van brace is pinching here, which you were talking about with wearing your arms and your demis and things when you're doing the Pell work, because you
Right.
know there's not much there. I can throw this all the live long day and look like I'm in a kung fu movie. The moment I put on my van braces, I can't move that as far.
Right.
So we were talking earlier about mileage on the joints and things like that. So when you're doing your Pell work, are you built wearing your van braces, your elbows, and your elbow pads because they almost act as a brace for the joint as well? Because I know a lot of the padding we tend to wear can absorb some of that shock, which will take out
Mhm.
some of the pain in the joints.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's something that my night reinforced with us. We didn't even get to start fighter practice until we did Pell work. Right? You'd show up to fighter practice and it was like, get in your armor. Okay. Now we do Pell work. And we would go through all our drills on Pell. And then you had to go into offensive and defensive drills. Then you actually got to spar. Okay. So some people think that might be a little bit rigid, but I loved it because it was very similar to a dojo atmosphere. It was, it gave me very clear, defined victory conditions. So, and you would think to yourself, God, I'm already tired. Of course, down here in Florida, it's 98 degrees and you're out there in full armor and you're doing Pell work. Now you're doing offensive and defensive drills with, one of your Squire brothers. And now you finally, you now get to spar. And you're like, I'm a dish rag. But it made me harder, right? It made me more effective, uh, and it pushed me to understand what my limits were going to be and if I
Mm-hmm.
could get beyond those limits. So, and I try to instill that in my own squires today.
Yeah, it's one thing we talked about before on the challenge is part of doing this is learning the techniques, getting through the drills, doing a more structured class at
Mhm.
practice. Because a lot of us, we show up, we suit up, and we fight. There's not usually classes. There's not usually much structure to it. Even with
Yeah,
the new folks, we usually suit them up and go, "Hey, here's an onside, here's an offside. Don't use the thrust yet because you don't know how to control that." Things like that.
yeah,
And if we did more structure like that, maybe not to that degree, because a lot of folks come into this don't have the martial arts background. A lot of us do. We'd
right.
probably have a lot more retention because we'd be teaching them and giving them a more solid foundation, which would reduce injury in the long term.
Yeah, so like if I have a brand new fighter, I will typically start out with just defense drills. I'm like, okay, you block. And I am throwing slow enough, but fast enough to allow their eyes to track motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll do defensive drills for a while, right? Just let them get used to defending themselves because, honestly, the longer you can stay alive, the longer you get to fight, right? So, and I guess, in some ways I'm a little rigid when it comes to fighter practice. I don't like swearing at fighter practice. I find it offensive to the dojo. That's the field of honor. So my guys know when I show up, they're like, there's, now again, one of those ugly shots that comes in and that F word slips out or a cuss word slips out, sometimes you just get hurt and sometimes it happens. But for the most part, it's comportment, right? I like to see that comportment on the field. And we have kids around too. There's no need to be foul mouthed when you're on the field of honor. I don't like smoking. I don't like to see people lighting up a cigarette, and smoking a cigarette when they're at practice. Now, again, like I don't enforce these things typically. Now, my own squires, I do. I'm like, please don't smoke, at practice, right? Smoke a cigarette, like use it as a treat. Smoke after practice, but don't let me catch you sitting there smoking a cigarette, in between rounds. I'm like, really? Come on. There's that discipline that I asked for, you know, honor the field, keep your language clean. We have children here. We have new people here, right? What's your comportment? And then be in the moment. I see a lot of guys just take off their helmets, sit for 45 minutes, put their helmet once more back on, and go home. So what, you fought like what, 10 fights? And there was 10 people there? So, and I think some of that sometimes is just not having clear victory conditions for yourself at a practice, right? So, I usually I translate that from Pell to practice to tournament to pickups, right? To actual fighting.
So speaking of that, when you're going into like setting victory conditions, I want to have one more piece of this, and then I want to move on to the next question that Sterling posted. So when you go to practice, I know some folks you go to practice with three things that you want to work on.
Yep.
You might not necessarily get to do all three of them in practice. If you can maybe do one or two, that's a bonus, and then you have that third one to bring with you next week. So maybe, for example, like if I'm fighting Sterling, he loves to get right up in you and just start hammering until something will stick, and you're just sitting here going, what do I do? So maybe my victory condition that day is not letting Sterling get close.
Yeah, stay away from Sterling. Yeah, and you know what? That's practicing range, right? So we know Sterling likes A range. He likes to be up in your grill, on top of your feet. Fine. So Sterling's going to come after me, and I'm like, BC, 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 right? And he's like trying to get A, and I'm like, nope, BC, BC,
Nope.
BC, right? But and that for me is fun. I'm like, nope, 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 right? Frustrating for him maybe, because I'm backpedaling and shifting and trying to stay out of his A range. But yeah, that's a great exercise, especially if you know a guy that loves A. And yeah.
Years ago, we were fighting at Penzic, and I was fighting. I fight lefty sword and axe, and he had his heater, and he just kept coming right up at me, and I was like, "No, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here."
Yeah. Yeah. Let me get that axe between you and me. But yeah, when I was young, all the guys wanted to be in A range with me. Right? They're all taller. And so why not? They're like, I am gonna, jump on Bree in A range, and I'm just gonna club her like a harp seal. And so today, I will tell you, you don't want to be in A range with me, right? Because A range is bad for you. Because I literally every guy I fought when I was young was like A range, everything's A, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I became I became very adept at fighting in A range, and learning how to control my upper body in movement to create angles for myself, and my footwork, to get around. Because seriously, being 5'7", and most of my opponents were above 6 foot, so here you are being leaned over. I learned very quickly how to defend and fight in A range. Yeah.
Yeah. One of our big tournaments here in the East, Burka. That if you cannot control range, you will not last long in that tournament. It is a 3-hour bear pit in a 10 by 10 square.
Yeah. Okay.
If you step 1 foot out, you lose it. If you step both feet out, you're dead.
Yeah.
I'm one of the crazy buggers that takes a pole arm into this, and I'll do a 6-foot glaive in the Burka pits.
Yeah.
It is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I being from Trimaris, bear pits are a staple of life. So, that was one of the things I learned early on, how to control that 10 by 10.
That's always fun because I love bear pits as well because if you get 2 pits going and you've got 15 fighters, you now have 11 sets of eyes on different fights. So you've got other folks that can look at it and go, okay, I saw this, and it's a way we can maybe give one piece of advice after every fight, just of something you can polish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So moving on to something relating to the challenge actually in the group.
Sure.
Sterling is asking, so when posting your 100 days, what format do you prefer seeing for cataloging?
It's really personal preference. I'm not a big stickler for it. Um, the fact that you're on there and you're posting makes me happy. For
Mhm.
me to go through daily is much easier if you're posting individual. Every day you're posting something new. That's easier for me because if you're underneath the same thread and you're stacking, it's a lot more difficult. I have to open that. I have to scroll all the way down to find your newest post, and then like it, or make sure that you're doing okay. Just checking in on you to make sure you don't need help or whatnot. So it's
Mhm.
harder on me to actually like scroll through a stacked thread. Um,
Mhm.
but you know what? I have no complaints. If people are on there and they're posting and they've got their ownership and their accountability and they're part of the community, and they're expressing their honor, I got zero complaints. Whether you want to stack it or single, post daily. The
Mhm.
fact is that you're there, and that's enough for me. Yeah.
That works. Yeah, I know a lot of
Mhm.
us. We will basically have we'll take our first post, and each day will be a comment attached to it. Also makes
Yeah.
it a lot easier to figure out what freaking day you're on if your days tend to blur together. Because I
Yeah.
know I've gone through a couple times on mine, and I went what freaking day?
Right.
Oh, I put 13
Right.
twice. That's why I'm off.
Right. And you know what? That's part of your ownership, right? So
Yeah.
if I've had a hard day, because I'm human, and I see somebody go, I'm not really sure what day I'm on, it slightly irks me,
Yeah.
right? Normally it doesn't bother me, but if I've had a hard day, I'm like, it's your accountability, right? You should know what day you're on. Don't give me the I'm not really sure what day I'm on, question mark, question mark, question mark. Come
Mhm.
on now. You've been doing this for 25 days. I know your day. Right? You don't know your day.
Yeah.
So yeah, but normally it doesn't bother me. But every once in a while I'm like, all right, come on now. It
Little
doesn't happen very often though.
Yeah. Oh no, it's little cheap for our wonderful ADHD folks. You have a cornucopia of knowledge in your pocket. You can look at your post,
Yeah.
figure out what day one was, and you can go to Google and say, how many days has it been since X date? It will tell you what day you're on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm old school. I got a calendar that hangs in my garage and it's
Yeah.
right by the door. So I literally have to look at it when I walk in the door, so I don't forget appointments. I know where I'm at on the Pell,
Yeah.
and I like, mostly I don't like keep my count. I'll just, like this is the day I started.
Yeah.
And so, I can always go back, but so yeah. Anything that helps you remind yourself to keep your accountability, because that truly is part of this challenge. And honestly, it goes beyond the Pell challenge. This, the tenets we have for the Reaper challenge, right? Honor, accountability, right? Ownership, community, right? That is, if you have aspirations for, say, knighthood or mastery or whatever your thing is, uh, your whole path is accountability. It took me, I wasn't elevated until my 34th year. So I had fought heavy for 34 years before I was elevated to the chivalry. I have very strong opinions on accountability and ownership, uh, probably because my path was so long. And, that is part of this challenge. So, yeah, I mean, I look for it. I do look for it. And I appreciate it. It shows me what your intent is.
And looking into that, it's something I want to talk about because we're at about the hour and 10 mark at this point. Um, so it's something we've talked about before, and there's been a lot of confusion back and forth about what we do if we're sick or injured during the challenge.
Right.
We've talked before about having one day. Uh, you've called them past days. You've called them days where if you can't do anything because you are, sick with COVID, sick with the flu, to something where you cannot bloody move.
Yeah.
So what do we do? What do we do there?
So in the rules, you get one pass,
Mhm.
one pass. And my expectation is that, you know, you do something to own that day. Like you read a article on footwork, or maybe you watch some videos on, you know, maybe it's Viscount, you know, Gregor Hawk's video or Duke Sean's videos or whatever, right? But you get one pass. And quite honestly, I don't like going past one pass, because if you're really that sick, stop, heal, you know, take care of yourself. And I tell my squires this: it's your job to keep that fighting machine in tip top condition. Okay. When you put on a red belt, you're saying, I want to be a knight one day. So, okay, own your path. It's your responsibility as a fighter, whether you want to be a knight or not, right? You just want to be a good fighter, maybe a great fighter. It's your responsibility to keep that fighting machine in tip top condition. So if you are sick beyond a 24-hour period, stop. You can always start again. And there's no loss or dishonor in starting again. I would rather you honor yourself, honor your body and your health, you know, and honor the community that's come before you, and start again. But yeah, one pass, that's it.
And I mean, it's something I'm very glad to see is becoming more and more prevalent in the rattan community. Is a lot of the old mentalities of, oh, keep fighting, oh, you broke this, walk it off, are going
Yeah.
away. Because like I've traveled to events before and thought I was going to be fighting for hours, and I've had to sit out because my back was shot.
Yeah.
Like I've got multiple compression fractures in my spinal column. I can't keep up some days.
Yeah.
So take the time to heal, take the time today so you can still fight next week or next month.
Yes.
Um,
And I would honestly say that my longevity in fighting has been because I took the time to heal. You know, any of the injuries that I've had, I've put a lot of money into physical therapy, a lot of money
yes.
into different types of massage therapy, like rolfing,
Mhm.
which, you know, is really great for fascial tissue, myofascial release. So I put a lot of money into my body to keep myself fighting on the field. I've chosen doctors specifically for longevity in fighting. You know, like my doctor, I came in and I was on the Pell challenge, and I'm like, oh, my elbow's kind of bothering me. And he's like, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm doing this, you know, the Pell challenge. He's like, well, switch weapons. This is my doctor, right? You know, where I'm like, hey, I'm going to war for a week. Okay. You know, do you need anything? I'm like, no, I'm good. So, but my doctors even know, you know, I mean, they're giving me the vernacular. I'm not giving them the vernacular. You know, they're saying war. They're saying repetition injuries. They're saying Pell work. You know, they're speaking my language back to me. And I've chosen my doctors for those reasons.
Yeah, I love anytime I've got a new physio now. And he's like, well, what do you do in your spare time? And I showed him videos of Penzik.
Yeah.
And he just went, I'm sorry, you do what? You've done what to yourself and you still fight in armor? How?
Yeah.
And then I show him how I actually brought my lamellar into physio with my pole arm and my armor, and I basically brought my whole thing to show him.
Yeah.
Because I've built my lamellar now to basically work like a metal corset, so it works like a back brace.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
So
The
it
same
doesn't
thing
matter
when
what
I was,
hits me.
yeah, same thing when I was doing physical therapy. I literally brought my helmet, my sword and shield in. I'm like, okay, these are the tools I'm using. Now, you know, model my physical therapy around this for me.
Mhm.
And you can see it click for them. I'm like, oh, okay, there's this weight here on your shoulders from your helmet. You know, there's this weight on, you know, the left shoulder, you know, elbow. And so they'll design my physical therapy around my needs.
because like this is our sport. This is our martial art. I mean, this is we swing
Passion.
swords with rattan. This is our passion. We're no
Hmm.
different than the Olympic fencers that put their time and energy into their art. And it's great now that we've got physios and doctors that'll look at us and go, okay, this is a big thing for you. Okay, let's make sure we can keep you in it for as long as possible.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think we got one more. I think we're gonna one more question we're gonna work with, and I think we'll close it out for the night. Because it's getting late where I'm too. Because yay Atlantic time.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I had was, if you don't have a Pell at home,
Hmm.
how do you train?
Well, I'll put this out there really quick. I'm a nature lover. Please don't beat up your trees. Okay. Don't go out there and harm your trees. Unnecessary. Literally, if that's the last resort, at least be gentle. You got to get creative sometimes. Some people use door frames. Um, some people find telephone poles. Uh, you know, it is an ownership game, so you really want to try to uh, to put that ownership into what you're doing, right? If you're going to get on the challenge and you do Pell work, well, you need a Pell. And one of the things I love about the Pell is that it's a direct link to our martial art historically. This is one of the very few things that we can link all the way back to medieval history and say they were using it back in, the 11th century. We're using it today. So sometimes you have to get creative. Um, Pells are typically fairly cheap to build. I think, I can build a Pell out from Lowe's for about $30. Times are tough these days. So, sometimes a family can't afford $30. Sometimes that needs to go for food and diapers and whatnot. I get it. So you got to get creative, right? And if you have questions, reach out to me. If you are a fighter and just have some general questions, reach out to me. Reach out to other folks. Um, gather your information to yourself, right? And this particular Q&A has been centered mostly on just answering Pell Challenge questions for the most part. We've kind of been all over the map today, which has been fun. But I'd like to do another one of these sessions and open it up a little bit more from just the Pell Challenge to let's throw some questions out there, that aren't necessarily Pell centric.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the challenges that we face on the field. It's a very different world for a guy who's 6'7" and a guy who's 5 foot. Very different world in fighting. I mean, sure, some of the things are the same, footwork and whatnot, but um, let's talk about those things. And if folks are willing to do another Q&A, I'm certainly willing, and keep that information flowing.
Yeah, I'll happily help run it. I have no issues there.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And I'm always available in the background if you've got a question, you've got a concern. If I can't help you, I will find somebody who can help you. Got some resources all over the known world. We've got resources in different communities, lightsaber and EMP, and the list goes on.
Oh yeah.
But communicate with one another, have fun, and and be gentle on new fighters. Let them develop passion before you show them the pain game.
Pain compliance is not our game. If you want pain compliance and things like that, that's you hurt rule set. That's
Yeah,
a whole different ballgame.
yeah.
Ease
And if
folks in. Be the person you wanted to have teaching you when you first started.
sure, absolutely. And and if you're gonna do the Pell Challenge, own it. Own it. Figure out what that means for you. Figure out what that means for previous reapers. Right? There's many that have come before you. I can tell you I've probably given out probably over 2,000 patches at this point in the 10 years we've been doing this. And that doesn't seem like a really big number when you say 10 years, but in all honesty, that is a big number, and I think it's much higher than that. I just never kept count.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're going to do the challenge, own the challenge. And if you're going to fight, set your victory conditions. Experiment, talk to people, communicate, play, have fun, and realize that not everybody wants to be a knight. Not everybody wants to be, a master of defense. Not everybody wants what we consider the pinnacle. Some people just want to go out and play with a glaive and be war guys and gals, or whatever your pronoun might be, right? Enjoy yourselves because it's fleeting. One day, like for myself, I think I've been fighting for 37 years, and I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I got to slow down, and it hurts your feelings a little bit. So enjoy every second of it. And I very much appreciate this community. I very much appreciate everybody on the challenge. Very much appreciate you guys doing this for me this evening and joining me and all the questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And again, if you need anything and I can help, I'm here.
Thank you, Sabri, and thank you everyone for joining us and spending time with us tonight. I'm going to sign off from YouTube, and we will plan another one of these in the near future. And keep an eye on the group. If you guys have questions you want us to talk about later, post them in the group. Reach out to one of us. Anyone you see on the group, anyone you see on this call, we'll help you out. If we, like Bree said, if we don't know it, we'll find someone who does.
Absolutely.
So everyone have a great night.